thank you everyone for joining us, especially, I bet these days are hectic with the start of the semester. But yeah, excited to bring everyone together to talk about how to improve teacher adoption of Flint. And honestly, from the start of the conception of this idea, we as a team were thinking how we don't really have the expertise to speak on this. We've heard from a lot of admins, but we thought it would be a lot better to have a bunch of firsthand accounts of how people have gone about doing this. So we have a great panel of about 8 people. I think some people might still be filing in. So lots of great minds to learn from today. So I'll introduce them firstly, and then afterwards, I have some pre-prepared questions for them. We can go through these, but then afterwards, definitely want to leave a lot of time for everyone else in the audience to ask them whatever might come to mind and just generally chat whatever feels natural. So yeah. And oh my bad. Okay. Yeah, the recording will be available later. So yeah, as always. And yeah, questions welcome at any point, especially during the, I guess, structured questions. Feel free to ask additional questions on top of that. Yeah, definitely want to make sure that you've come with questions and that those can get answered here. But yeah, as for the panel introduction, I have 2 whole slides of this, but yeah, thank you to Allison from Wesleyan School in Atlanta for being here, and Alex Spencer and Alexis Reyes, who I think will be joining us later, are from Kincaid, out of the greater Houston area. I put Vinny on here even though he can't make it here today, but he sent some responses to my questions over as well that I can share. And Cora, all the way from Hong Kong, is also here with us today. And then Aisha and Ed are here from McDonough School, out of the greater Baltimore area. And then Liz from the Harker School in San Jose and from Brophy Prep out of Phoenix. So yeah, lots of faces from different places, and yeah, excited that you all can meet each other as well. All right, so I'll go ahead with the first question. I'm actually going to stop sharing here because it feels a little silly to share a giant question on the board, but feel free to follow along in the presentation, which I'll send a link to again, just in case. But yeah, the first question is, how did you all roll Flint out at your school? What did that initial introduction look like?
I'm happy to start. At Kincaid, we started with just a group of early adopters. So we identified a handful of teachers that we knew wanted to be working with AI or had been working with a non-paid subscription, and we got them on the platform first. So letting them experiment, collected feedback from them, and then once we had a group of sort of ambassadors of people who had been using it, then we started kind of slowly working our way out. So we're on basically our 2nd year of using Flint, and we still don't require that anyone does it. I think that's probably coming next school year. But I would say by having kind of a slower rollout with people who were using it and being successful, and people who could say, I tried this and it didn't work, but then I was able to try this other avenue and it did work, they were able to convince some other people to get on board. So it's been sort of a slow rollout, but I think it's going to stick because of being thoughtful about the rollout.
Nice, nice. And I know Vinny also mentioned like a lot of collaborative instructional design and coaching. I don't know if you have like more details to share about that.
We just do a lot of sessions for people to do purposeful play. I think what we've basically discovered is that people want to use AI, but the thing that we hear most often from teachers is that they want to, but they don't have time to figure it out. So we have hour-long lunch periods, and we just let people bring their lunch into a conference room, and there's no agenda. It's just letting people play with it. And naturally, the people who are early adopters and who are really good at it come, and the ones that are a little nervous come too, and then they just help each other. And that's been really useful, I think, for people to have some courage and confidence that they've got somebody right there to help them if they need it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think, Allison, did you unmute earlier? Did you want to add to that or say something
Yeah, I was just going to follow up with what Alex said there. We also started small at Wesleyan with a group of teachers. We did pick a teacher who we thought would be an early adopter from every department, middle school and high school. And we put them in a book study with Matt Miller's AI for Educators. And as we went through the sections of that book, we gave them Flint to start experimenting with. So that was at the start of last school year. And what happened was this school year, during our pre-planning, each one of those teachers in their department meetings presented how they were using AI within their department to their department members. And that for us was really the key to get kind of the people who were a little hesitant about bringing AI into their classroom to see from their own department how it was being used and how it was beneficial. They also shared pros and cons, which I think really gained the trust of their teachers. But same, start small.
We have very similar kind of strategy, but our school is really focusing on the AI. So we have this AI working groups, like because my school is a little bit special. This primary and secondary, they really separate. And I don't know if this is any case in other schools, if it's K-12. Like my colleagues always joke, they never see each other. Even the couple working in the same school, they never see each other during the whole year. And so what we did, I think the AI working group was really helpful because people, they sign up. We have a big group, like 50 teachers, and so the big group, they sign up from different subjects and different teachers. So they, this school year, they would have set a little mini goal for them, and most of them just wanted to try out the platform, things like this. So I remember that one teacher, she's a French teacher, and she mentioned about she didn't know how to use AI. She was doubting how efficient this would be. And now she's one of the biggest users. And so that was like a part of the thing we found it really helpful. And the other thing is, like, I know that introducing new stuff, like a new platform to school, could be very challenging. So what we do, we just pick like even the smallest achievement, we would do the biggest celebration. We put it everywhere, TV across the campus, and we use the Flint, like you have this like data panel thing. So we screenshot, we do the weekly update about who's the Flint star they're using it. And so everybody feel like they're under the spotlight. And so people start to use it. I think we introduced pretty late, like at the beginning of 2024, and actually October something-ish, but we got over 1,000 users got on the platform within a month and a half. And so people using it. We also saw this, there was a huge need for us, but this big celebration was really helpful. Yeah.
So I'm in California, and we have grades TK through 12 and 4 different physical and theoretical divisions. We're one school, but we're large as far as independent schools go. And so, you know, I just want to echo what everyone else said in terms of starting small. We were looking at different AI platforms in the summer of 2023, and Flint was the first one that we elected to go with because of their focus on student learning. And that has been a really powerful catalyst to get teachers on board. And so we did a similar thing where we had a pilot group. We invited whoever was interested, and we were fortunate enough that folks who were interested really did spread the grade levels as well as content areas. And so we have this really excited TK teacher. We've got first and second grade. And so being able to hold space for not just the people who are very excited, but also hold space for those who are really reticent has proven to be the most important. I think anytime you're rolling out a new technology, you need to create safe spaces for people, emotionally safe spaces, because we're dealing with a whole bunch of very well-educated, savvy consumers of the world, of technology, of educational pedagogies, of curriculum. And so they are rightfully so going to be hesitant with any new thing. And so if you can create safe spaces, and a variety of differentiated spaces for the adults, then, you know, you catch more bees, not bees. You're not catching bees with honey. You're catching flies with honey, than you do with vinegar. Like, people will naturally be curious because we work with a bunch of really cool, curious people. But it has to be safe first. And so, you know, like everybody else here said, start small. We've been having monthly pilots. We provide everyone with some reading material ahead of the pilots. Everyone's invited to come in at any point. Lots of entry points, lots of PD, both formal and informal. And that has proven to be a really, I think, successful strategy process. Yeah.
And I love that point that Elizabeth makes, and I guess I'll dovetail off that at McDonough, creating those safe spaces, and whether it was right or wrong, but I think it was effective for us. We ended up more of a top-down approach initially. You know, McDonough, the school, and our CTO, Aisha Bryant, you know, vetted all these different programs, and we fell in love with Flint for all the reasons that we're here for. And then we, but from there, then as an all school pre-K through 12 sort of all hands on deck meeting, the school laid out sort of the, you know, why we're doing this, why we think AI is important to have in the classroom, sort of taking a bullish approach there, and what we're going to use, and then sort of explaining Flint and many of the safeguards that Flint bakes in terms of privacy and all the things that I think then allows teachers to put some of their fears to rest, those AI fears to rest. And then sort of the what, maybe, right? What are our policies and protocols, which initially and still are really broad. Like, we already have a pretty robust honor system and honor code. And then just telling teachers that it's up to them, that they need to make a policy for their classroom and be very explicit about what that is, especially in the middle school and the high school. And then from there, a lot of teachers who had additional concerns and wanted to continue to, you know, to sort of process all this, you know, went to Aisha, went to some of our admin leaders to have those conversations, but that cleared so much space and I think created a really nice platform for then all that important grassroots and early adopter usage and the stuff I can talk about later. But all that stuff, I don't know if would have happened if some of those early adopters were feeling like around the lunch tables, people were griping about AI and they were trying to, I don't know, if we weren't all on the same page early on, and if I think we hadn't cleared that space, I don't know if those early adopters and the grassroots would have been, you know, bad metaphor, but would have had as much light to kind of grow and do its thing. So that was important for us.
I can build on that. I'm from Brophy Prep in Phoenix. I think setting the groundwork or good foundation of leaning into AI as a tool rather than just a pitfall was really important, and we've been doing that, I think, from the start. So then when we adopted Flint a little over a year ago, we were already kind of forward moving and just looking for the right tool. And again, for all the reasons we know, Flint was the right tool for us at the time. We also got it in the hands of a few power users really early. We happened to have a PD session already planned at that time for full faculty, where I was able to debut it and say, hey, here's something new that we're jumping into. You know, and showed it off and said, let me know, no pressure, but let me know if you and your students want to try this at the start of the next semester. So this was just about a year ago. And the first week of the spring semester last year, simply by people letting me know they wanted to opt in and try it, I think at that time we still had to add students manually into the system. And I think I added 700 to 800 students in that first week. Which was 2/3 of our students, right? Because teachers were seeing it and word was spreading really quickly, just mouth to mouth without any sort of top-down mandate or everybody must do this. It was just, hey, here's this thing we've been talking about, and now here's this tool that is going to allow us to easily put this into practice. So from there, it was same thing everybody else has talked about, right? Like, that was as big of a launch as we got. And then from there, it was just small and continuing to have professional development sessions and invites for people to come to a safe space just to learn and play and try. And that's everything from, hey, come learn how to build a Flint activity, to let's just talk about some basic uses of AI in the classroom, and then we can steer that into like, hey, and here's the tool that you're going to use to try that. One thing that I think has helped us be really successful was just letting students go with this as well. One of my favorite stories is last spring, without us really telling students that they could do this or showing them how to do it. One of our kids in our AP English language class built an activity to give himself feedback on AP essays based and plugged in the College Board rubric and had all sorts of rules in there to really direct what kind of feedback he wanted. He kind of quite quietly shared it with some other students in the class. The teacher overheard what they were doing and was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Shared it with all of her classes. And before you know it, kids are just firing practice essays at this thing going into the AP test. They all get really good feedback based on a College Board rubric. And that wasn't something that a teacher did. That was something that a student figured out how to do on his own. And there are many cases of that where kids are really leading the way on how to use these tools, to the point that the last PD session we did, I had kids leading the how to use Flint session for teachers, which I think is hopefully a way where the adults on campus who may be hesitant or may be interested, but just feel like they don't have time or they don't have the expertise to do it. That's a more approachable way for them to come and talk to a student. And if the student can do it, then they can do it. So those things I think have all helped us be successful to this point.
Nice. And I think that that activity that the student had made with the AP essay writing is now one of our like most popular templates too. So extra thanks to that student.
We also have the similar situation. Like I did not know some students were using it until because we check the data every day. One day, few students' names just secretly kind of crept to the top users. So we're like, what's going on? So we had to check, investigate. And so we talked to the students. It turned out they figured out it can really help them to improve like their work, but it's in more like ethical way, because Flint usually doesn't give out this answers directly and you can see what they're doing. And we were very surprised with that. And that's one thing we like a lot about Flint, because students can take initiatives, create a kind of activity by themselves instead of just waiting for teachers to create it for them.
Yeah, kind of jumping in there. I'm sure a lot of you remember that like activities in Flint until pretty recently used to be called tutors. And originally that was a lot of our thinking of like AI can be like a tutor individually to students. And now while we've moved away from that naming because we want to have something that's a lot more, intuitive for teachers to use and incorporate as part of their lessons, that sort of tutoring element of Flint's kind of always going to be there, right? Like if students struggling with a topic, they can go to and use it. And one thing we're trying to do as a company is like figure out how we work with you all to help students embrace that angle too. Like how can students start using Flint more regularly to prep for a math test, even if their teacher hasn't like made an activity for them. So yeah, really cool to hear these examples, Mike and Cora.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Cora said just about checking the data. I don't look at it daily, but when I go in, it's always like everybody. I think you might be tempted to think like, oh my God, what am I going to find in here? But it's always the opposite of looking through there and just being amazed at like, wow, like it's amazing that kids like asked that question and that they have this resource and they got this help last night at 11:35 p.m. right for a test at 8 a.m. the next day that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to get help with. So that's always a really cool experience for us, is to go through that data.
Yeah, these are all awesome stories, explanations. I guess I want to pause really quickly for anyone who is also on the call if they want to ask any follow-up questions or more specific questions about initial rollouts of Flint. Oh yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Hi. So my question, I don't know if anyone will have an answer, but I'm not at a place where I can have like early adopters sort of really stepping up. Just the way that our school is structured, we've rolled it out to our one grade fully. And so I've got 88 students across the grade, all of whom need to be accessing it. But I'm finding that my faculty aren't necessarily embracing it at the same pace. Do you have any tips for how to get those slower adopters sort of on board and ensuring that there is a more equitable access for my students, since I can't just have one class that really is high flying and the other three sort of left in the dust?
I have one thought. One thing we discovered last year is we needed to really figure out what was a pain point for teachers that could be alleviated with Flint, and then put that tool in their hands to show them that they could do it. And for us, that was report card comments. So we set up an activity for them to create their report card comments, and it was wildly successful. So a lot of people, it's a laborious process, and people didn't necessarily say that it took them less time, but that it was easier and that the comments were better. So even the people who were the most resistant saw that there was something there that was not unethical and was not going to take away their own expertise. And I think by giving them something really tangible that alleviated that pain point, it brought a lot more people on board.
We also had when we introduced and had our college counselors come and also share that they were going to their college counseling conferences, and they were talking about how it was okay, that colleges were saying it was okay to use AI to write your college recommendation letters. That was like the clouds parted for our upper school teachers. I don't know, Greg, if what grade level you're necessarily talking about, but for us, it's that identification of a pain point. And we still had teachers who were like, but wait, we can do this? And there was a genuine fear on their part that they weren't allowed to, they would get in trouble by I don't know who. But they were genuinely fearful that they couldn't, that it was some sort of copyright infringement or intellectual property concern. And what we heard over and over again from the colleges and universities, as well as from then the college counselors, was they care about the anecdotes, they care about the stories, they care that the student to be able to share the information. But if you as a teacher need a little extra inspiration because you've been just plowing through a whole bunch of letters of rec and it's becoming mind numbing, and you want to stay creative and have something fresh to say, then using Flint to create these letters of rec is completely okay. So making those safe spaces for the folks who are reticent, and finding those pain points. Yeah.
I've had a lot of success just trying to help people. I mean, I think that if we all think about our AI usage, we've all probably had some breakthrough moment or collection of moments that where we all realize oh my gosh, this is the way, right? Or this is going to change things. And some people just haven't had those moments or haven't been able to find those moments. It's not because they're resistant to it. They just haven't had time or energy, or they're afraid of it. So helping people individually, I think, has been key for us, where I'm in and out of classrooms a lot. I do a lot of observations, and I'll just make notes. And if I see somebody who's not already using it and I'm walking to a class and I'm watching them do a worksheet activity that they might have also done 25 years ago, that's an opportunity for me to grab that worksheet or sit down with that teacher after with the worksheet and say, hey, let's try this in Flint and see what kind of activity pops out just by even feeding it this worksheet and asking it to do something a little bit different with kids. So a lot of those individual things are hey, can you send me that essay? And I'm going to build you an activity to help prepare students to write it. And then I'll share it with you and we'll see how it works. We'll try it out. So it's a lot of that individualized coaching, I think, to just help create those small moments that lead to that breakthrough moment that help people then realize oh yeah, this is going to change how I'm going to do things. This is going to help me. This is going to save time. This is going to make this easier. This is going to be better for kids. Any of those things.
I would second that. Go ahead, Cora.
Sorry, we had something very similar. So, because I work very closely with director of learning, and so kind of just oversee the curriculum, finding opportunities how we can do it. And so with some of the teachers, they don't have time to make any changes, and I usually would secretly create activities for them. And then knowing the timeline when they're about to teach that, and I would share with them like, hey, this is something I created, let's give it a try. And some people like it. And next time they would come to me like, I want this, that, like all of this demands here. And I was like, okay, let's give it a try it together. And the third time, usually they just like it go along just by themselves, but I always try to give it to them first. And a lot of people, they get very amazed by the results.
Just to kind of second what everyone's saying here, our big key was telling teachers to think about long-term projects that usually require a lot of one-to-one student time. And so I have two examples that span the grade levels. The first example, our high school health class, a teacher had students set goals, and the goal writing process used to take almost a week of their time. So I worked with that teacher one-on-one on rewriting that assignment into Flint. And so that saved them 5 days in their lesson planning, that it now only takes 1 day. And when they meet with the student, they're meeting about the printout from Flint about how they went through and created these goals. The second one comes from a lower school STEM teacher where he had third grade students create business ideas for tomorrow, so future business ideas. And again, same process. They have to think of a fun business name, a logo, a business plan, all of these things that with third graders took a lot of time of just one-on-one meetings since everyone had an individual idea. Again, we recreated that assignment in Flint, and it saved them weeks in the elementary grade level.
That's awesome. I feel like we kind of touched on the next question already. I'll paste it in the chat, but yeah, within the school, there's always these varying sentiments, which we've been talking about for a little bit. Yeah, so if you all don't have additional things to add to this, we can also move to the next question. But yeah, wanted to ask again, like, how have you gone about addressing, especially like the people who are like concerned or maybe uninterested?
I think the biggest thing for us was having the person who was kind of the spearhead of the project in their department speak to those hesitant teachers. And I sat in on a department meeting for our foreign language classes where one teacher was saying, you know, this is just going to basically ruin our classes. We can't bring in AI. Like there's a lot to just kind of the classical way of teaching. And so I heard a discussion between those two teachers, which from my point of view as the technology coach, if it can come from a teacher in their department, it has so much more value than if I sit there and try to kind of wave the flag on this and say why it brings value to the classroom. So I think having those department level cheerleaders is really, really beneficial to bringing on all those teachers who are hesitant. And that one teacher now who was hesitant and really kind of throwing up the red flag is now one of our top users. So it just kind of speaks to the power of that interdepartmental communication and discussion.
Early on, we during those PD meetings that I mentioned, we often allowed people to kind of self-place themselves in different skill levels, so beginning, intermediate, advanced, and then we also had created space for people who had so many hesitations or concerns that they couldn't authentically try something in one of the other levels. You know, we wanted everybody to have some sort of experience, but told people, look, if you have so many concerns right now that you can't genuinely enter into this and have an experience, we want to give you a place for that. And, you know, at least one of those meetings, it was, you know, we had 20 to 25 people in that room, probably, you know, predictably and rightly so, probably the theologians and the philosophers on campus had the same sort of concerns about this is going to ruin traditional education. And we just gave them space for their voices to be heard. And we made it clear that, look, like we can't have the conversation about AI shouldn't be a thing, because it is a thing. We're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube at this point. The conversation needs to be, how can we ethically and responsibly use this to help kids learn better? And that, you know, that meeting went with the principal I was booked for, I think, 30 or 45 minutes, and it went 2 hours. But everybody had their voice heard. And everybody, I think, was reassured that that we weren't trying to ruin education, and that we were aware that there are pitfalls and there are questions that we need to ask and there are things that we need to be really, really careful about. But it's about the potential of moving forward. And I think people just having their voices heard is really important. And I think, like Allison said, some of the folks in that room are now some of our power users on campus. And I don't think it's just because that one meeting, but I think them having their voices heard certainly helped.
Can I just make one more comment here about this? I know we've covered a lot, but there's something to be said for ripping the Band-Aid off, I think, and especially in Flint, if rather than looking at it theoretically, asking teachers to sit down and create an activity immediately, I have found replaces sort of hesitation with interest, because it's so intuitive for teachers to use. It really is like, it's a gentle approach to AI for them, and has like once teachers create activities as like a starting point to using AI, even it's caught on, I think, because it's really intuitive.
I could add one more thing. So we had, just as a sort of representative anecdote, we have multiple folks who are published of their own right on our faculty, and one of our initial pilot members removed himself from the pilot partway through last year because he had significant concerns about intellectual property. So I'm not talking about necessarily academic integrity. I'm talking about AI as a whole and large language models, and what that was going to do with, how was that going to be reconciled with intellectual property, even to the point of, if you are asking the AI to be a historical person, for instance, from what is that information coming? And one of the things that I think Flint has done a great job at making sure that sources are now identified in information that's provided, but that was not necessarily something that was baked into LLMs a year ago. And so it was at that point that he was like, I can't be part of this, because who's to say that my published work isn't then, it's sort of the concern about the Napster of 2024, right? Is this going to become something where it becomes the undoing of publishers, published works, authors' ability to actually make money? And so that was sort of a unique perspective. And what we did is we gave space for that. And he came to me, and developing earlier, I think, Mika, forgive me if I'm mistaken, but Mika, I think you were the one who said it's that individual connection. And so I kept with him. And I was like, you're right. You're absolutely right. I don't know what the answer to this is. I don't know how it's going to evolve, and we'll see. And our job is to be supporters of the curiosity. So if you don't feel like you can be in this space right now, I can respect that. And also, I feel like your voice is exactly the voice that we need in this pilot. So you're an intelligent person. Don't you want to be part of the solution rather than acquiesce? And he's like, I just feel like I'm going to get too fiery. So it was a real kind of multi-month undoing. And then once they started citing sources, there was a little bit of alleviation with that. And where he went last February from going, I'm not part of the pilot anymore, he just submitted a session to talk about bias in AI and how to write prompts to rectify some of the bias that might exist within the responses that you get for our next faculty retreat. So while he may not be necessarily part of our pilot, he still is very much engaged. And I think looking for those opportunities to empower and also kind of needle the people who are like, no, I can't do this because of this and this and this. It's like, well, then shouldn't you be exactly the kind of person to bring this to light in larger groups too? So
Yeah, I'd say that's one thing that's been like challenging for us as well is like there's two main I should say there's two real problems I think that AI has created that we don't have a solution to. I don't think anyone has a solution to, and like they are real problems. One, like Liz mentioned, is like ownership over content, right? Like the New York Times is suing OpenAI for this. Like it is a real problem out in the real world. No one really has an answer to like what's going to happen beyond what Micah said. Like the toothpaste out of the tube, they're probably not going to delete ChatGPT as a conclusion of that lawsuit, right? Even if the New York Times wins. And then on the other hand, you have like students using AI in ways it shouldn't be for like academic dishonesty. That is also a reality. It's happening. Obviously, teachers are concerned about that. I think like our approach has been like if we can show enough positive use cases for student learning, hopefully that can kind of give enough fuel to explore AI to bring it to students, right? But it's not to say like these problems don't exist. It's like, okay, if we can find enough positive use cases, maybe that's a reason why we should continue exploring it instead of like turning a blind eye to it, especially because students are going to continue using it at home. But yeah, sometimes we get asked like, hey, what can you guys do about like cheating, or what can you do about content ownership? The honest answer is like we also don't know. I wish we did, but those are like two real problems that exist.
and those are human behavior issues. Academic integrity is about it. Does it make it faster? Does it make it? It's like the difference between bullying and cyberbullying. Bullying has always existed. It just happens faster and it's more pervasive because of the speed with which it happens now, which is the same with academic integrity. It has always happened. It's just the speed with which we can get the information is significantly more. And so how do we be responsive without being reactive? If that makes sense.
And academic dishonesty is not necessarily more pervasive. Studies show, even our own data on campus shows that the percentage or the number of academic dishonesty cases that land in our dean's office every semester are really just about the same pre-AI versus AI. So kids cheated before AI and kids cheat now. So that's a different problem. It's not an AI problem. It's a pedagogy problem, I think.
And also, are we paying more attention now? Right? Like that's also just a question.
When we launch Flint, we have different concerns, not about this, but because we try to launch that to the whole school. And our primary teachers, once they saw Flint, they're like, no, we're not going to use it. It's very secondary interface. I don't know if you guys ever had this kind of issues. So it was hard for us to try to persuade primary teachers to use it. But we found because our primary is bilingual, Mandarin and English, and a lot of AI platforms, kids, they're just smart enough, even year 3, they can bypass this Mandarin part, start to speaking English. And then we figure out you can actually, with Flint, there's no way they have to stick in the Chinese. So our Chinese, there's a whole strand. So the teachers were really happy to start to use it. And then later on, we found that because Flint, you can customize the type of the input and output. So for young kids, they can actually talk instead of type. Still, we're struggling with the layout interface, to be honest, but I think a lot of teachers found that because you can customize the type of the input and output. So they're really happy. And we had it year 2 teachers, they use it. And they found that some kids are still struggling with all of this extra support, everything. And the teachers figure out they can work in pairs. So they still can discuss, learn from each other, and then give the response to Flint, to the activity. And we thought that was really smart. And that was all the whole set of little trials that the teacher did it. And now the whole year 2, they're doing it. So I don't know if anybody has any concerns about using Flint with the younger students, because apparently secondary, they just got on right away. But primary was like, once we launched it in October, like all primary teachers right now, we're not gonna use it. We're like, we paid for it, you gotta use it. So we started to introduce to all primary, and now we can see the change, but it was difficult at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm sure there's so many like smaller problems, bigger problems, everything, new things pop up, old things kind of fade away. Yeah, and honestly, great conversation. Love it. I guess for the next question, I feel like the people on the panel might be able to speak more to this because you all are some of the people who have been using Flint the longest. And I know like sometimes when like a new tool comes out, like people get either really excited about it or not. It's polarizing, but at least people are talking about it. And I guess my question is, have you all done anything to maintain that sort of teacher engagement with the platform, or is it like just coming super naturally? Um, Anything along those lines?
I think just persistence and intentionality in our professional development planning to make sure that we realize that some people still aren't using it. And just because it's a really popular tool on campus and some people are power users and kids are great at it and all that sort of stuff, there are still some people who don't know how to use it and haven't gotten into it yet and haven't had that breakthrough moment. So, I think that needs to be a constant for us. We need to have open doors and find time and opportunities for people, and like we've said, in safe spaces to come in and just play with it and try it out. Those individual conversations to full faculty meetings to just try to reach people in all sorts of places, but just to make sure that we're not content with like, well, we have it and we've launched it and it'll take care of itself now. If some of it does, but I think the most of that has happened at this point. So now it's going to be persistence and working with people to help them.
Yeah, obviously there's no one way, and the persistence is, at least for us, is still required as we kind of continue to watch the ebb and flow of Flint usage. But one, I think, really positive thing that Flint has going for it, which folks have mentioned earlier, is just the ease of use and the intuitive scalability of it, that I can send our history crew, a link of something I or someone else has created, and they can immediately, with like 2 clicks, just like make it go. And so that is such a positive. If we remember back in the many other, flavors of the month and different educational technologies over our careers, I remember like ARC curriculum mapping. It was, and I'm not even blaming the tool. It's just, it was so user intensive, and it was like nails on a chalkboard. And I remember it was one of the toughest adoptions of educational ed tech I've ever experienced in my career. And this couldn't be any different. And so we find it can be really helpful actually when people are most tired and most spread thin, to send out an idea or 2 or 3, almost like this kind of booster shot. They're like, oh, that's awesome. It's a Monday morning. I had no idea what I was going to do, which has its own problems, but I'll use this. And if it comes from different users that they trust and not just from, our CTO every time or from the head of school or something, it can feel so much more organic. And again, within 2 clicks, they're up and running. And so I think you surprise yourself actually sometimes when it feels like the worst time to be reminding folks and sending stuff out is actually sometimes the best and easiest time for people to realize and see the light when it comes to AI in the classroom.
Oh yeah, Bill, do you want to speak to your comment? Or do you want, I can read it, or?
I mean, I don't have much to add. Basically, just bad glare here. Just trying to remind people that that what's available. And also, as I mentioned, the second piece of that comment, that ChatGPT still gets a lot of press, and people start talking about, oh, this is ChatGPT, or this with a GPT, or a Harvard business professor has used a GPT to do X, Y, or Z. They just have to keep reminding people that we have a service, it's here available, it's got privacy protections. It's transparent, the things that we wouldn't necessarily go ChatGPT, and to them, I mean, we're paying for a license, obviously, but to the individual teachers and students, it's free, it's already available. That occasionally can go, a long way. Just catching somebody who's interested, but they're like, oh, I can do this with ChatGPT. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, kind of to add to that, as like more AI tools come out and get pushed out by larger companies over time, we have heard reports of like teachers reaching out to administrators like yourselves saying like, "Hey, can we get Gemini?" or "Hey, can we get Copilot?" And we really view it again as like a positive thing because it is getting more eyes on AI in general. And maybe that person who like didn't use ChatGPT when it first came out, but now wants to use Gemini will end up either using that or checking out Flint as a result. So yeah, I think that's going to keep happening. Like AI isn't going anywhere, obviously, and like more of these big companies will continue launching things. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I'll put in the last question, but just like a general catch-all, what advice do any of you all have, panelists, other people on the call, for admin currently looking to roll out Flint? Yeah, from people who have done it and are learning, I guess.
I think start small is kind of the message I'm going to take away from today. But also think about your three primary groups to focus on: your parent community, your students, and your teachers. When we first rolled out Flint, we talked to our parent community about AI, how it was transforming the educational landscape. We talked to our students about ethics and what that means with AI. And then obviously with our teachers, kind of that same discussion, but also then giving them the tools to implement this in their classroom in a purposeful way.
Yeah, and I think Vinny was saying some similar things where he said to make sure that you have defined the school's guiding principles in the role of AI within the school and the division and the department. So like being able to look at it on a smaller scale and then like broaden that out seems very important. And he also said that similar steps that like a master teacher uses for creating an outstanding collaborative learning environment, like being supportive, kind of some of the things that a lot of you all have talked about today with like the establishing those relationships. It's really important to have that supportive, collaborative, team created instructional design and coaching environment. And also the opportunity for people to like reflect on maybe what went well with the Flint activity, but also what didn't go well and like what they can learn from that. And being able to really identify any like mistakes or just things that even you just didn't know at the time, and being able to grow from that seems really important too. Yeah. Also, if anyone has any like additional questions for everyone here, since we've got everyone, so many great minds on a call together.
I just want to shout out to Allison and your school. So your school has this, hang on, Sohan just shared, I need to go here. Your how to use AI never allowed, all of this. And so we have seen a lot of different versions. And your school's version so far is our team, our favorite. And we really, really like it. We think it's really good. And we think it's very clear, easy for students to follow. Just want you to know.
That's great. It really evolved from the ISTE standards of technology integration. So that was kind of part of its evolution, but also I can't recommend enough Matt Miller's AI for Educators book. It is like the tiniest book, the easiest read for teachers. And it really just gets them thinking about how to use AI in their classroom and then where they kind of need to hold the line of where it kind of crosses ethics. So it gives them the vocabulary to discuss that with their students. But yeah, if you have any questions on that, we're always happy to share it, Wesleyan.
Thank you. Just want you to know that it's been a really great version. We like it a lot.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
So this was mentioned by a couple of people on the panel in context of other questions. If other people have things to add, I'd be interested to hear on folks who have set up, I guess, activities and are using Flint's more for teacher-facing or administrative purposes. I know there was an example of comments. There was another example that I forgot. We've been using Flint, we've been licensed for Flint since last spring, and it's really been, we focused on it as the student-facing tool. And actually, we have another tool that's kind of teacher-facing, a different tool that we've sort of made the teacher-facing tool. But I've thought about this, and I've wondered what other examples that you might have had with teachers or administrators using Flint for their work that's not, directly instruction is a teacher-facing tool.
We've had some luck with that. So Flint is so good because it defaults to not give you the answers directly, right? And to help you work through something rather than just like, yeah, here's your essay. That's great for kids. It's not necessarily fantastic for an adult who's like, no, I need the lesson plan. Like, I know how to do it. Like, I want you to do it. So I built an activity that was and moved the slider over to basically give all the answers. And just like the objective is to help teachers with whatever they need help with. And I loaded in our faculty staff handbook and our student handbook and our website and all sorts of stuff, so the tutor knows about our school, and just made the objective and the rules to help the teacher with whatever they need help with, even if it doesn't seem like it's related to their class. And it becomes an activity now that doesn't push back in the same way. And teachers have found that that's pretty useful for them, because then that becomes their chat GPT, right? Because it does everything that they need it to do within the system, and it doesn't push back.
So we have teachers who are using it just as like a normal AI kind of large language model platform, also because we're based in Hong Kong and everything got blocked here unless you use VPN. So, and it's kind of school paid for, you can have the direct contact with the large language models. And so a lot of teachers using it, also because the school was subscribing another AI platform before, and it's more like teacher centered. And some teachers were using it quite a lot, and we phased it out. And some teachers were not really happy when we made the announcement that we're going to phase out. So what we did, we just went to the backstage of all of the data, figure out so what kind of tools they are using it the most. So we create this common group for teachers, and like report card generators and this kind of feedback lesson planner, and put it together in one of the Flint groups, and with all of these tools that teachers can just easily use it, and kind of little replacement of the previous platform. And I found that some teachers really appreciate that, because they feel like it's kind of just go-to tools they can use it. And also maybe it's just special environment in Hong Kong, we can access anything directly. So, and everybody was pretty happy. You don't have to pay for your own VPN, and it gets your parents' credit cards just to get all of the OpenAI or Claude and direct contact. Yeah.
One thing I can share here, although though we're still pretty early on in this, so this is more like future direction of where we're taking the product. We do want Flint to be more of a teaching assistant for teachers. And there's a few different tasks you might think like teaching assistants do. One subset of those tasks is definitely very student facing, and that's where our focus very like narrowly has been so far, which has actually like made it harder to use Flint for like more personal productivity tasks. Like Mike and Cora have like manually made templates or activities for their teachers, which is like great, but it's like very time intensive. You have to jump through the hoops to make things for folks. We're definitely heading in the direction where we hope to make Flint as equally easy to use and usable for both kind of the areas of use cases, whether it's student facing or teacher productivity facing. So it's going to take us some time to kind of actually deliver on that promise, because we want to do it very well and like not compromise the ease of use that we have today. But definitely the direction we want to move in is like making it as useful for both kind of use cases, because for a while we kind of said like, oh, report card writing, these more substitution-esque tasks are less impactful for students. That said, it is such a strong on-ramp for teachers, and as a result can still improve the student experience. So we're definitely branching into that.
Yeah, and I think this is somewhat related, but I heard a funny story recently from Ty Hart at Westminster Schools in Atlanta, and she said how she was creating different activities within Flint to help her give feedback for her students, but also within the activities where like they're using it directly, she created a list of personal like sayings of hers. Like whenever something goes wrong, she says like, "Oh, bookers." For context, she teaches in lower school, but so she uploaded like all of these little sayings of hers and then put that into Flint and then told it to use those actively when giving feedback. So I thought that was just like kind of, it's cool how like beyond like the teaching assistant metaphor, like with AI, you can really just scale what you yourself can kind of do in sort of like a presence in the student's life. And I thought that was a really cool way of just like incorporating a little bit of the teacher's own personality and way of speaking, honestly. Yeah. We have 2 minutes left of the scheduled time. Yeah, I'll like do my little closure bits, but also want to leave some time for additional questions if there are any. I can stick on at least. But yeah, so within the presentation link that I sent, there are a couple additional resources that I added at the end. Yeah, in terms of professional development, our team wants to be super available. So I put the link to schedule PD with me in there in case you need it. There's also like our PD slide deck and a getting started guide for teachers. And then I also added some additional reading. Recently, I wrote a quick blog about what we've heard from a lot of the schools that we're working with through case studies. Yeah, so there's like a blog summarizing how to do adoption a little bit there. And then I also linked the rest of the case studies and also this playlist for educators from Eric Hudson. I think at the end of sometime last year, he like collected a lot of good readings and links and put them all in one place. So I thought that also might be helpful to share with you all. Yeah, and just quick shout out. We have more campfire sessions coming. We're planning a couple more right now, but the one that's currently out there is the one for computer science. So if you all want to send this to computer science teachers, that'd be great. Or yeah, just like let them know that this is happening and we want to welcome all of the bright minds to come chat with us. But yeah, thank you again to all of our panelists. And if there are any like lingering questions, I can stay on at least. But yeah, thank you all for coming. And yeah, this was a great session.
Thanks, everyone.